where I could tell a cohesive story. I could tell the story of newlyweds, but I could tell it to the voice in the voice of a millennial, so millennials understand it. I can tell it in the voice of Gen X, so good old Gen X, good us, so that my demo understands what we're going through, and I talk about it in different, and I give them different access points to it as well. But I think it helped me understand, what parts of the story were important, what parts were emotional. The emotion is the piece that translates demographic, translates right now language. Our biggest obstacle globally is we are not all speaking the same language yet. Technology is minutes away
This
from
is
making that happen.
Unconditioning, Discovering the Voice Within, with Whitney Ann Jenkins. Hello and welcome to the 53rd episode of Unconditioning, Discovering the Voice Within, where I bring on guests and we talk about the inner authentic voice and the challenges and the rewards that come from following it. This week, I have with me Vinnie Potestivo. Vinnie is an Emmy Award-winning media advisor who helps clients leverage their media exposure, find fame, and make impact. He has his own podcast called I Have a Podcast and is responsible for discovering and amplifying the voice of independent podcasters worldwide. As a network executive at MTV from 1998 to 2007, he discovered talent and developed new ways to support their goals, pioneering the way brands and business owners could contribute to their public narrative by making them stars and producers of their own television series. Early hits include Punk'd, The Osbournes, TRL, Eighth and Ocean, Wild and Out, and The Challenge. And since then, he and his team at VPE.tv have continued to be well-trusted connectors who develop and distribute original content across all media platforms, especially podcasts. And I had a really great time talking to Vinnie because I was one who consumed a lot of these shows that he was a producer for. So it was really fun to dive into the mind of the person who was producing and creating all of these shows that really defined a generation and gave voice to a generation. So this is a conversation that I am really hoping that you will enjoy as much as I had having. Here's Vinnie. To coming at the perspective of what you're doing, but I want to know your story and how you got to where you are and being a subject matter expert in branding.
Oh my gosh, listening to voices literally
Yeah.
is where it comes from. It's actually so similar to you. I think that what I do in talent development, what I call talent development, or what I refer to as talent development, especially from a celebrity perspective, the brands that I helped build during my time at MTV, it's like they had a public voice.
Mhm.
There was already a presenting voice, which I know that they're aware of,
Right.
but there wasn't a reflective voice until reality TV and then ultimately social media. The
Right.
reflective voice is something that gave us instant feedback. 25 years ago, they didn't have instant feedback. There were some numbers that they can look at, downloads, which Napster and Lime, you can understand where some technology hurt a very precious and sensitive data point for artists, right? So, but
Yeah.
again, crippling part of their voice. And I think like the similarities in what the framework of unconditioning, right? To hear the voice. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
Can I tell, there's a story that my pastor used to tell me in vacation Bible school. It was my favorite story.
Yeah, go ahead.
My mom, by the way, in reality, my mom is from Kansas and my dad is from Brooklyn. So I grew up in Staten Island as like a
Okay.
Baptist and then a Reformed Christian and blah, 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 blah. That was my journey with my family as it pertains to this story.
Yeah.
And our pastor told us this story. There were these two friends, they're childhood friends, and ultimately they grow apart. But one year they come together in this one day in Times Square. And wouldn't you know that one has become a really successful entrepreneur. He works on Wall Street. He's in New York City. He's used to the bells and the whistles and all of everything that is New York City. But in comes his friend who he grew up with. But in comes his friend who's decided for a calmer lifestyle. He's out in the farm. He is one with earth. He understands the change of the winds. He understands when the temperature drops, the rain's about to come, when the dogs are barking. He understands and is listening to these signals.
Right.
And they meet up in Times Square. And the farmer says to the entrepreneur, "How about that? There's crickets in Times Square. Who'd have thought?" And the businessman goes, "Crickets in Times Square? There's no way there's crickets in Times Square. You must be hearing things from where you're from and implying that you must be hearing things. There's no way that you could possibly hear." And he says, "Well, what do you hear?" And they pause for a second. And if there was some Foley editing in this podcast, you would hear coins dropping, you'd hear car horns beeping, people talking. If you're really psycho like me, people cigarette smoking and throwing it on all the things that we're tuned to listen to that we
Mhm.
just they're just receptors for good or for worse. They're just receptors pulling in information. And the farmer says, "You're missing it." He goes, "There's a cricket." And he takes one step forward, and they're in a safety. In New York City has these like big concrete safety bunkers, sort of to corral traffic, and in them are little bushes, and in that little bush was a tiny little cricket, and he was able to point it right out. And just understanding that there can be so much noise, but
Right.
yet we do have the ability to tune in on a specific voice, for better or for worse. I learned it was worse in the beginning. I didn't realize I was hearing some voices, focusing on some weird Vinny voices that I shouldn't have been focusing on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when that voice started telling a better story,
Uh-huh.
I leaned into that, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that story because it's so resonant with this whole entire conversation and a great way to segue into a question that I like to ask my guests first is when is the first time that you really remember recognizing an inner voice within yourself?
All right. So yeah, and then your guests bring up traumatic experiences because here we go. You want to know where I got my super skills for being a people pleaser, for putting people first, for conflict resolution, over performance, I'm the oldest of four, maybe 9 years old, and unfortunately, my mom overdosed. And
Okay.
there was a moment that I knew that I had to make a decision on what would happen next. I called my father, who then came home and then called 911. The crazy part about that story is that for about 15 years of my life, I told myself a version of that story where I was the kid and I called 911. Like I kind of like made that even more dramatic, but I'm just
Mm,
pointing out how my story shifted. I don't think I meant to make it more dramatic. I don't think I thought I needed any more sympathy or pity from adults than I was getting. I was like chock full of that, it felt like. So I don't feel like I lied to get a bigger result. I think I lied because I got confused with the facts and suddenly those became my truth. And then I got stuck in that version of like, I had to make this decision, and I'm a boy. I don't want to be the man of the house. And just because there
mhm.
isn't a man of the house doesn't mean that as a boy I should be it. And it was the first time I really listened to myself and made some conscious decisions about steps that I needed to take, not just for my mom and for my family, for my brothers and my sisters and me. There was something cataclysmic that happened
Mhm.
that
Oh
day
yeah.
where it became my everything.
Do you feel that perhaps you made it more dramatic because you were trying to justify the way that you were feeling to equal the way that
Yeah,
other people
yes.
probably, yeah.
I think there's probably, if there's 360 degrees, I think there's 360 things out of that. Also, I was hungry, so I was probably just moody. Also, I
Mm,
didn't know. So I was, in some ways, ignorance is bliss. There was no internet back then. A couple of things happened that I was also mad at, like it happened something, what happened in October. And I went to school the next day and told people that my mom was rushed to the hospital because of a heat stroke, and it was like 60
mm,
degrees in New York, and my teacher told me in front of my whole class that I was wrong, and I was like, "That's
mm,
literal. Don't You can't tell me I'm wrong. That's what the medic told me." And then like I realized, like I was aware that parents could make mistakes. I didn't realize that like all adults were capable of making mistakes, and
oh
and
wow.
not to say I challenged everything that came my way. I accepted everything that came my way, and then I would be like, well, I think that's where a little this is where the word fortitude comes into play. And I was like, all right, so like I know I don't have to reinvent the wheel, but like, hey, what if I'm the guy who does reinvent the wheel? I mean, someone invented it first. What if I happen to be second? Someone invented social media. We can go Friendster and then MySpace, or MySpace and then Facebook, and Facebook and then TikTok. We can go on and on and on about first and second, right? And this weird part of it, my reaction became hyper focused on my brothers and sisters. So my Nikki and Sal are born in '84 and '85, which as a millennial is the audience I've been entertaining in
Yeah.
media my entire life. If you grew up watching MTV in like '98 to 2007, and you
Yep.
watched hours of TRL or Sailor Karaoke or Run's House or Wildin' Out or Laguna Beach or
Right.
Newlyweds, Punked, those were shows that I poured my life into. I also love talking about those titles because hopefully someone out there recognizes them. And
Yeah.
I love this ability of share this, like I'm recalling right now. I just threw out those titles. If anyone resonates with those titles, because I that was my life, right? For the
Yeah.
hour that I had to make it, you gave me an hour to probably rewatch the episode 5 or 6 times without even knowing it. So that
Yeah.
return on energy is cataclysmic. And anyway, so long story short, I alluded to MTV, but I worked on those shows ultimately in the capacity of talent development. It was my job to find a way to work with talent that hadn't happened yet. It wasn't
Yeah.
just to come on and promote something. There needed to be a more meaningful result to our relationship.
Okay. How do you feel like your experiences with your family affected the way that you handle your career, like using that voice and
Yeah.
then the talent development? How do you feel like that connects?
Well, I love this question. For me, storytelling for all audiences is not something that's easy if you trying. I can build a community which has multiple audiences, and there's a general story that I'll tell. And then if I have a keyed in audience, I'll want to really sort of dig in deeper. I think I, I don't change the facts and I don't change the characters of my stories, but the stories change based on who I'm talking to.
Hmm.
If I'm telling something to Nikki and Sal about politics, I talk to them in a way differently than I would maybe my grandmother, who I know knows more than me, versus my brother and sister, who may know more or less or equal to me because of the info exchange we all had. So, and again, no social media or internet input yet. So there was a lot of sibling crowdsourcing. Hey, dad said this. Is this what you think this means? Is this what mom said? A lot of sibling resourcing happening back then. Um, it helped me become a storyteller where I could tell a cohesive story. I could tell the story of newlyweds, but I could tell it in the voice of a millennial, so millennials understand it. I can tell it in the voice of Gen X, so good old Gen X, good us, so that my demo understands what we're going through, and I talk about it in different, and I give them different access points to it as well. But I think it helped me understand. What parts of the story were important, what parts were emotional. The emotion is the piece that translates demographic, translates right now language. Our biggest obstacle globally is we are not all speaking the same language yet. Technology is minutes away from making that happen. So soon we won't have to learn other languages to be understood in other languages and bring and understand other languages. That's a powerful tool to start relying on. I can't wait for us to feel like our neighbors in India and our neighbors around the world are as close to us as you and I are, just because we're in a couple of states,
Yeah.
apart. There's really no difference in the talent globally. Oh, the input, the point of view, it's so rich. There's so much to be created in collaboration. I'm so excited for that. But it made me an excellent collaborator. What I went through with my family, I didn't
Hmm.
really want to do anything alone. I didn't want to fail at anything. So anything anyone wanted to do wasn't my goal, but I can make their goal happen. So if Sal wants to start, oh my gosh, Sal, I hope you listen to this. If Sal wants to start a Christmas light, decoration thing, I'm going to be the guy that's going to build his flyers. And I'm going to probably take a map out of my little town in Staten Island and say, here are the posts that I think you should be on, because traffic goes this way, headed towards where people go buy Christmas lights. So get them on their path. And I used that skill for 20 years in reality TV casting to find people. I never went out and found, Beyonce or Mandy, like the huge stars that I was responsible for delivering. I didn't go out finding them, even though I had to deliver them. I found people who I know knew people like them. I found, masters of communicators that I gave amazing, unprecedented access. I was the guy at MTV who kept the door open and
Mhm.
collaborated with people. And I think that's something I did with my own family, where I was happy to be active in the youth group if it meant that my family can get more. I
Yeah.
loved working at MTV if it meant my brother and sister could be in the TRL studio whenever they wanted to come by. I wanted them to have that access. Otherwise, that wouldn't have been a fit for me. And to go through that experience with your family, I'm so grateful, because I mean, I never ended up. I actually made a commitment to myself that day that I would never try drugs, so I haven't, and I never have
Yeah.
deviated and done hard drugs and party drugs or anything like that. So, but I was the guy at MTV who was like, "You don't want to show up stoned because I won't let you on TRL. You can't host for 2 days. It has to come out of your set."
Mhm.
I was a little crazy about it. Even like smoking weed. Even Dave Matthews Band, like even when they would come into the studio, he's like, "Yeah, but everyone's smoking. Dave did." I'm like, "Yeah, but he's not hosting a live show." He gets to say, "Sorry, let's redo it over again. I'm Dave, ha ha ha." And it's like
Right.
pop culture gold for the history of life. This is, so accountability, responsibility. There's part of
Mhm.
that comes with being creative, and I think I learned that. Like
Yeah.
we made things. We made shows. We created videos. We were super creative. My sister and I still have a podcast company together where we work together, and she produces really deeply meaningful podcasts that, to be honest, sometimes go over my head. But that's my kid sister. That's my like leader who teaches me things that I need to know. So I'm plugged in because I need the language. I need
Yeah.
the input dictates the output. So like I need to be connected to you so that I learn what I don't know, and I have built that system, in doing so.
Yeah, it sounds I like what you said about storytelling very specifically. Because as a human species, that's the way
Mm.
that we learn and understand emotions and experiences. And I also really love the way that you were talking about hearing other people's voices and
Mm.
talking to them in a way that they'll understand in your voice. Because when you think about things like branding or talent development or even like reality TV shows, sometimes people assume that there's a lack of authenticity, but you're spinning it so that it's authentically connecting with a certain demographic.
Yeah, well, why? Because it's commercial. Because yeah. It's, by the way, that's why I'm not working in television. It's
Mhm.
unfortunate. The ad part to TV is a bummer. I never got to work on. I never got to work at HBO or a place where it was subscription based, where they really truly cared about the audience first, not the ads that served the audience. Like
Mhm.
MTV was a great place to work at, but don't get me wrong. If I didn't tell you, I don't want to say specific brands, but even then, back then, it's like it depends. Axe, like the brands that you see, Mountain Dew,
Mhm.
the brand that you see, on MTV then. So while I was appreciative of some feedback, it wasn't always about bringing in new audience. It was about selling a product, and for me, I have this friction, this fight, sort of a little bit at let me rephrase this. One of the reasons why I enjoy development more so than production and publishing is that if I get it right in the beginning, if I get all the information I need to keep you focused on the topic or distracted from something that I don't want you to talk about or focus on because it has nothing to do with the show, this purpose, this vehicle stands to prove, um, for silly ratings, because people are desperate for ratings. I'm so lucky to have worked in television when it mattered, when people watched it, when 3:30 to 4:30 for people who are like 35 to 45 years old now, for 3:30 to 4, it was sacred. It was like pop culture. It was like we were aware the earth was moved. We knew where artists were and what was
Yeah.
happening, and MTV News 10 to the hour, and there was this like ability, like we felt like we were really connecting to opportunities and part of opportunities, and just as I saw reality TV become more of a mechanism for content as opposed to what we did at MTV. You know, MTV, born in 1981, they say, hey, now we got videos, so who's going to make the videos? They go, let's give it to the artists. They already make music. They're probably pretty good. They're probably creative. So let's get some deals with the labels, throw them some thousands of dollars, get some videos. Artists make videos. And when I got to MTV, I think we took those 3 and 5 minute increments that late artists were known for creating content and storytelling time, and turned that into 30-minute windows of a glimpse into newlyweds, or a glimpse into the Osbournes' life and what it's like to be functional in a dysfunctional, quote unquote, dysfunctional family. That's what I learned. I learned how to live in a dysfunctional family and be functional. Osbournes.
Yeah.
I learned the roles of misogyny and what the expectations are in a relationship. Newlyweds. I deflected it and created my own version of reality that was audacious, punked. I can go on and on and on about how all of those experiences shaped and continue to shape, the alchemy of my creative output.
Yeah. And you've been in this for a while now, so you must have seen some transformations over time. And so how do you approach things now differently than you would then with MTV?
With MTV. Oh, that's funny. With MTV. So, that's MTV. It's funny. When I talk about MTV, I throw her right into the female gender, and I'm like, we dated at a point in time where I thought that was my fit. She was everything that she was. She's like the best of what it was, and then she changed, and then it just became different. And then ultimately, I realized that like our goals weren't the same. But
Mhm.
I was so grateful to have spent the time that I did there. I don't feel like, I got to be honest, I don't feel like there are some opportunities that I don't know. If I dig deep, I can make something up about an opportunity. I feel like I messed up traumatically, that didn't end the way I wanted it to, or the way that it could have. But I really feel like I went out of my way to create a sustainable approach to creating culture around content, and getting to cast TJ Lavin in the challenge, getting to pick the voice who identifies as the emotional and physical challenge of that MTV demographic is one of the most rewarding moves I got to make in my entire life. At MTV, he's an athlete. He's a brother who shows up for LGBTQ and cancer, and just causes that have nothing to do with him, where his heart is so connected, and he fights for us in the room when we're not there. And I know that about him. And Nick Cannon with Wild 'N Out, the amount of comedians that the community, I don't even know which way, the amount of jobs that show's created, the amount of energy that it's put out, that's sustainable. I made some decisions. I was part of some choices
Mhm.
that had permanent impact in pop
Yeah.
culture, and that's something I don't take lightly. That's why I'm doubled down in podcasting now. That's why I'm really leaning into the Podmatch community. I actually have this philosophy that, like, I got to know all the artists at MTV. Ironically, I would meet them at the nightclubs in New York,
Mhm.
and then they would be like, "Oh, you're the guy from MTV." I'm like, "Yeah, come. You're on TRL tomorrow. I'll come down and say hi." And then I would go down to the studio. I would say hi. I already knew the teams and the managers, so there was no introductions needed. It was cool. And so what I'm trying to do here in podcasting, same exact thing. I think Podmatch is like my TRL. For those of you who don't know Podmatch, I geek out, but Podmatch is a great directory platform where you can discover each other. Let's put it that way. And us having these conversations together builds community and rapport that strengthens this message. And just, again, I geek out about finding people who understand, the deep level of unconditioning. We're horrible storytellers. I'm sorry to say
Right.
that. Innately, I'll say it again because I'm so sorry to say it. Innately, like, we are just that, we repeat what we hear.
Yeah.
How could we? It's not our fault. It's not our fault. And there's so much grace in understanding that. And again, those silly shows I brought up, Newlyweds, Osbournes, that changed her life forever. Not because she recorded a show, but because you watched it. Because you saw the choices that they made, and that informed your perception of their reality.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
that's what we're doing here. That's what this content is all about. Like, this changes my alchemy of output forever. You will
Mhm.
always be part of my output, and I'm sensitive to that. And I love that about what we get to do in podcasting. I geek out.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it gives a platform to many people who might not have the opportunity like years ago during the MTV days.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like talent development and what you're doing now, when the market, such as podcasting, is super, super saturated, how do you think it's possible to stand out and be discoverable?
Oh yeah, super cool. I challenge the phrasing, Your Honor. I challenge the leading the witness. Speculation. Yes, is it saturated? Yeah, everything's saturated, But how many more poems are there in this world? How many more phrases or songs or books or movies or I mean, there's so many other intellectual pieces of how much do we stop painting? Do we stop creating art? Is everyone going to stop taking selfies finally? Because the selfies are saturated. How is anyone ever going to understand a selfie? The poor podcast. What a bum rap. It's literally, I've been in media now 25 years. I got excited about TV because I saw MTV, CNN, Fox News. I saw
Mhm.
TV channels get added to my rotary dial, channel 20.
Yeah.
I saw when it got to the thousands. Podcasting is podcasting is built to have singular streams of casting that can be streamed over a broad network. So while broadcasting has one signal, podcasting has millions or thousands. That's how you stand out. You stand out because you have an opportunity to decide where and how you get discovered. It's not, you don't need this guy, Vinnie Potestivo, casting director, and tapping your shoulder at the
Mhm.
NSYNC concert. Hey, you have a great look. Would you like to be a VJ on MTV? Swing by MTV. We'll do a screen test. Like I used to do that. It was cool. I wanted to meet people where they were at, kind of like I do on social media. Like I like people who follow topics and looking for interesting things and
Mhm.
and contributing to interesting things, right? Like one of the ways I would discover stars at a huge concert usually is there's a large group of people looking at them.
Mhm.
Same exact. I don't go out looking for the stars. I let them. I send out the vibes and I let them guide me to them. I trust the world that I surround myself with. It's by choice. It's by choice that that you are in my life, and hopefully, when you see opportunities that
Yeah.
I'm right for or are right for me, that you get to connect us, because we have an opportunity to make impact, and I like development because it's easier for me to make long-standing impact if I can pick the direction, pick the team, help you choose the team, help you choose the method, the platform, the way that you're going to execute. But you have a right, you have an ability to choose how you are discovered. Um, I take my podcasts and I turn them into clips and GIFs and stickers on Jiffy, and then on Tenor, which is the LinkedIn, Twitter equivalent to Jiffy. Giphy? I'm saying this.
A GIF or a GIF?
GIFs and
Yeah.
Jiffy. Yeah, GIFs are part of Jiffy. Okay. So like where the stickers are on they're different.
Yes.
So I'm mindful that I create screenshots of my podcast that have takeaway in them. So I learned, and I actually dropped it. The input dictates the output. Mandy Moore taught me that. It's kind of cool to know that part of the process of being Rebecca or creating original artwork and create is based on like understanding what the words that people are using, the way they're
Yeah.
using them. You have to use their words to connect with them.
Mhm.
That so the input dictates the output. Um, and I have that in a GIF that you'll find on Tenor if you search for Mandy Moore event, whatever the ways I put in there, because I want you to find me next to Mandy with implementable advice. So I made a choice to create something that you could then share. And this is the secret to discoverability, by the way, without exposure, is an action. And that action should be share. And the things you can share are posts, experiences, contacts, which is networking. You can feedback, merchandise, album. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the things that I recommend people create, just so that when you're discovered, you give the person the ability to share something of value. And that's what I
Mhm.
mean by you have a right, you have a choice, you have actually a decision on how to be discovered. Exposure is up to the algorithm, and you play that rightly on each platform. And exposure, being seen, right, is one thing, but discovery is being seen and then that person taking action. Oh my gosh, I watched this Christmas special. Michael Bublé, you have to go buy the album. It's my mom calling. Vincent, he's gonna. I discovered one. I got one. He's gonna. She calls me. He's gonna be my Mandy Moore. He's my discovery. I'm like, Ma, I just work with him. Like, you don't even know what I do you? But she has this ego thing clicks in, right? Where there's pride. I discovered, and not only did I discover it, but what am I doing? I'm sharing it with my son, and maybe every Christmas he'll play this album and he'll think of me because why? Ego. I discovered it, and
Yeah.
this is what we do by creating small pieces, even GIFs that help people share us, and that's one of the ways that I'm standing out right now as a podcaster. That's something that anyone can do that costs $0, and it's a slow burn. It's kind of like when you search for me, I'm going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and that's going to impress you that I, that was the result that came up, as opposed to, oh, wow, Vinny, I saw you were doing this thing. Tell me more about it. Educate me, educate me, educate me. That's burnout. But if I can be found where you're ready to take action, where you want information, and I do this, by the way, I do this with blogs on podcasting too. Another way to stand out as a podcaster, we talk about converting podcasts into blogs. So there's
Mm-hmm.
something called Q, which is, it's a blog aggregator. VPE.TV/QUUU. Three U's.
You.
Yeah, you,
I
you,
like that.
use. And what it is if you go to Q, you can go to Q for free, and you say, I want blogs about podcast marketing, or about talent, about self-improvement, or storytelling. And what it does is, based on the algorithm, it tells you the 10 blogs that it thinks you're most likely to want to read and or share.
Mm-hmm.
I love helping podcasters create blogs and getting those blogs into that aggregator, so that people don't need to know your podcast name or your title or your name or your guest or the artwork or all the other stuff we spend so much time, quote unquote, branding.
Yeah.
Branding meaning artwork, not branding from like the heart of the brand, meaning like, how can I really truly connect, and like what's low cost, high impact. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Impacts. Yeah. Impact.
Low cost
Mm-hmm.
money, low cost time. Think
Mm-hmm.
about that. If it costs too much time or money, what can I do that doesn't cost this much of my time or money, that can make
Mm-hmm.
an equally big impact? And for me, it leads to evergreen content. Blogs are a great way to do that. Again, that site's VPE.TV/QUUU. And there are a couple of other we'll talk later. There are lots of I love turn on creator mode on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn newsletter is a monster tool. There's no free, everyone who's got MailChimp and Bippity Bop, there's no free newsletter system like the LinkedIn newsletter system, which hits your in-mail, your actual mailbox, your trends, your phone alerts. It's a killer tool for creators who are organized and looking to create blogs and maximize their time without being lost in the social media post to post world that tends to consume our time most.
Yeah. Thank you for those tidbits.
Yeah.
It's
Ooh, I
very
got excited about that one. Thank you.
valuable information.
Oof.
Um,
I really get passionate about it. I want to see you be successful. The worst thing I've seen in my career is people leave. I hate it.
yeah.
It's sad.
So, because you are a podcaster, what is your hope to have an impact upon?
Yeah, I want to help people build sustainably creative brands. I want to talk about some of the errors that I've seen get made on the millions, tens of millions of dollars level, and also the ones that cost nothing. I like helping people get connected to success early in their career. I created something on my website called the Creator Hub. It's a free service. I invite people in. Please, memberships are always free. I have awesome resources. I have 99 plus awards worthy of winning. People don't know that because you have a website, a blog, an
Mm-hmm.
email, a social media account, a podcast. By the way, you identified me as a podcaster, and I love that you said podcaster, because to me, I identify as a podcaster because also podcast hosts and guests are covered in that
Mm-hmm.
term. It's a
Yeah.
really inclusive term.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish that I would have been a podcast guest before I was a host, because I learned when you want to you want to learn to when you hear your story
Oh
the
yeah,
first few times,
absolutely.
when
Hmm.
like when you first you say it, then you hear it, and then it zings, and then you get
Right.
to the point where you're starting to say certain words, and as those words are coming out of your mouth, it starts to zing. So you're like,
Hmm.
all right, I'm gonna work on my story.
Yeah. How does it feel to be one who was once discovering people to now have people discovering you with your
Oh,
podcast?
I appreciate that. I don't know. I never really thought. Thanks. I never really thought about that. Ignorance is my perspective is. I'll say it this way. Uh, Here's what I did. I set myself up to be discovered next to all the people I love and have created with my entire career. My podcast is called I Have a Podcast, and I sit down with Mandy Moore and Suchin Pak and Brian McFadden and Damien Fahey, Susie Castillo. I can go through the whole list of Christina Milian, Jamie Lindsay. I can go through the whole tier. Now that's so 1998 to 2007. Literally, that's the guest lineup. But I've created with them. I trust them. I've made really impactful content with them. So this time around, as I'm choosing to be a voice and have a little bit more of a presence, I do it with them by my side. That's the coolest thing ever. You can make me emotional now. I get to think about what I'm really doing. I don't
Yeah.
have guests on my podcast. I have my friends
Hmm.
I've been through creative war with, and we won
Yeah.
sometimes. Some of us, some of them,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I did.
Yeah.
And I think I'm recalling some of the nostalgia of the earlier part of my career at this stage of what I'm doing today, because I'm doing the same exact thing now as a 45-year-old that I did when I was 20 at MTV. I got a database. I'm meeting people one-on-one. I'm fully connected. I'm figuring out maximum potential. I am looking 2 years into the future of where I want to be, and the people that I would love to have around me to acknowledge
Hmm.
what we're building, and I'm doing it as a community. If I
Yeah.
just if I just guessed it everywhere and showed up everywhere and tried to pitch myself everywhere, I feel like I wouldn't. I would make it's like a couple of raindrops, in the pond. But I'm throwing a boulder in the pool in the pond, a pod match, and I'm hoping that us 20, 25, however many people are in this community of pod match, I'm hoping that together, because this is something I learned from Ashton Kutcher. He was so great in the room. He would learn something you would say, and then in the next meeting, it was already like part of his vocabulary. Like I meant it. I said this and I meant it earlier. You will forever be part of the alchemy of my creative output, and I'm
Hmm.
so mindful of that. And this journey as a podcaster that I put myself through, it's cool. I didn't realize how much hard work I was making people go through
Yeah.
just to have to do this on TV. And the best part is I own it, and if I don't own it, then you do. And I have inherent trust
Yeah.
in you. Like again, we made a conscious decision to do this together. We collaborate on this. So
Yeah, yeah, and you're sharing the value of your experience, which I feel like has kind of like a priceless kind of wisdom to that when you are sharing from your own experiences.
oh, thanks. But yeah, but also
Yeah.
I'm also sharing from like a lot of other people's
Yeah.
experience. I'm like, and then Beyonce was like,
Mm.
which way to um and actually saying that, that's also, I'm conscious, so by the I'm conscious that I have uh celebrity stories and access to very sensitive information that I'm very mindful of not exploiting, but also there's nothing I would share that I haven't shared with this person directly, and
Mhm.
there's no one I talk about that I don't currently have a relationship with. And I say this because I want us to have these stories. Like I chose us again. It goes back to this. I like going on a kick for Podmatch. Like I'm saying this so that you can understand. So not you, but the people listening can understand how I'm strategically trying to make an impact in a group of people in my weird and own unique way through my fails and failures and wins and experiences and other people's and the outlook, and the coolest part about it is that you meet people, we meet each other, and we have like, we didn't go to school together. Maybe, I don't know, I have an I have a business degree in theater management. Not many people have that. What's your degree? What did you go to school
Um,
for?
well, I have a bachelor's in acting in theater,
Yes, yes,
and
communications.
now I'm getting my master's in psychology, and I'm focusing specifically on creatives and performers, because I feel like there's a lack of research surrounding those things,
I
specifically with
imagine.
mental health and all of those.
Wait, are
Um,
you heavy into archetypes also? Do we have to have a whole conversation? We'll
we're
have a
gonna have to
whole
talk, yeah.
conversation. Yes. So yeah, that's actually, so this so cool, your journey, by the way. We have so much in common, and here we don't know. I went to Wagner College as a psychology major with a
Mhm.
vocal scholarship, and a cheerleading scholarship, of course, because it got to be like
Of
Lear and
course.
me. It's got to be something. And then that first year, they came up with like a business degree in theater management. And I was like, oh, that's kind of, and I was the computer club guy, so it was unique. I was destined to be creative in tech without
Mhm.
finally
Yeah.
the times converge. And maybe this can be leveraged as part of the answer you asked earlier as to how do people stand out. You stand in your strength.
Hmm.
Technology was always my strength at a time where I didn't want to be an educator. So I wasn't the person who was, but so what I mean by that is at MTV, for 10 years, I was the guy when IT wasn't around, I fixed everyone's mailboxes. I connected the LAN wires and I understood hard coding, and I could reset a computer and I can problem solve, and I could take two VCRs and wire them together so I can edit. It's weird to think about editing video before
Oh
iMovie
yeah.
and our iPhone, but like I had two VCRs that had a
Hmm. Yep.
wire and rig to pause, record, and that was actually seen as something that was like tech savvy in
Hmm.
98. That's
Yeah.
I know that because when I got hired as the coordinator and we launched the talent development department, I got asked to go to all the, like maybe like five or six executive offices and rig and show them how I did my thing so that they can make edits in their office. It's like weird to think that we couldn't, but that was a unique skill that I had. I wasn't a casting guy. They didn't need me for casting. They didn't need me to organize the casting. I was a database guy. I can meet people
Mm.
and type in their information and data and know that it won't get lost. Like a weird skill set, but at the backbone of what I do, it's really meeting people and organizing information. And I just turned it into reality TV or unscripted casting or MTV
Yeah.
casting or podcasting now. Um, which made me think the word casting, casting means, if you think of RSS feeds and casting, literally casting is drawing a line and connecting somebody to a touch point, casting.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I like that part of the, maybe I'm try to weave that into the continuity
Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about
of
fishing too.
yeah, that's right. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it, and so well,
Hmm.
yeah, like yeah, well then you're doomed now. That's reality TV casting. You're doomed with the big hooks, but
Right. Yeah. So you're pulling all of your authentic selves together, right? And then creating something that is valuable to yourself and others.
also I can be more transparent about my authentic self.
Yeah.
Unfortunately have more rights now than I did 20 years ago. So
Hmm.
uh, I don't hide behind, I don't have to hide for the companies that I work with or the companies that I no longer care to work with. I don't have to hide my sexuality or any part of my life that I used to have to working at a
Yeah.
publicly traded company, unfortunately.
Yeah. I imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, not lie. I mean, I didn't minimize it. It is what this is what it is. Like my friend, everyone, this hasn't changed ever. If anything, I'm leaning more into it now than ever. Um, but talking about being in love, talking about relationships, that wasn't something that I was able to share at work the way a lot of my friends were, and mostly because I did work at a giant media company that was looking to get that. By my time there was the first time CBS bought them and then unbought them, and then we didn't buy MySpace. It was a very sensitive time financially, and
Hmm.
I was part of conversation anyway. So all of that to say, uh, if it weren't for that journey in me, I wouldn't have made the decision to live in my truth and to help people find ways to live in their truths. And the best way for me to help people find in reality TV to find them to live is just present them with options.
Hmm.
That's all I do. That's the fun. That's the producing, quote unquote, that you see me doing maybe with Kelly and Jack and the Osbournes. I'm just presenting, hey, this happened. We can react to it in a couple of ways. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
It's a collaborative moment here. And little did we know how etched in stone some of those moments would be, but good was the day that television impacted communities and culture the way that it did.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for being part of it and watching it and feeding into it all and then doing this, being
Yeah.
inspired to create, because that's what it
Mhm.
was always all about. was for us to feel like them, really, truly. That's what they wanted. And they, meaning I think, original creators, Beyonce's and the artists that had to lead this creator economy that we're in before we can now do what they do. Have the same access to the same contracts, the same brands. It might not be the same amount of money, but like the same rules, right? The FCC is cracking down on this now. As of this week, there's a big story about the Kim Kardashian transparency case. Even though she disclosed it was an ad, it wasn't enough disclosure. So we're really leaning into an important time in media. How we create is important, and we have a responsibility to do so. Yes. Appreciate you.
Yeah. So we're coming up on time, because I think you said you wanted to keep it at like 45 minutes. So if people would like to discover you, where can we send them?
Ooh, take action. I love that. VPE.tv, 5 letters. That's my website, VPE.tv. That's where you can go to find my creator hub, awards worthy of winning, influencer platforms that pay out. If you're a creator and you're looking for ways to be compensated for your creativity, I have lists of platforms that I feel like would help connect you to actually profit and income, exposure. Say hi to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm just myself, Vinnie Potestivo. I say hi on LinkedIn, and it all starts with a hi. Don't waste like an in-mail thing. I'm super chatty, unfortunately. It's like pull up a chair and say hi. I do lots of lives usually on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. I do a live audio room on LinkedIn where anyone can join us who has access to a microphone built into their computer and uses LinkedIn. So just plenty of spaces for opportunities and hellos, and I welcome energy. That's what it's really about. I don't want to get stuck making content. I want that content to inspire and make impact, ignite conversations that create communities, and as creators we can do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I have one last question before we go.
Yeah.
And that question is, if your inner voice had a billboard, what would it say to the world?
Got creativity, with not a sans serif font though. It would definitely be a serif font. Got creativity. I'd work on that. Maybe I'll also maybe default to my I don't know why I love that I said this as a high school senior so much, but we may not have it all together, but together we have it all. I really feel that way. I worked at MTV, where MTV was a central point for a lot of creators. It wasn't like I randomly worked with celebrity talent. I worked with the celebrity talent that identified as being creators who wanted to make content that changed communities. Again, I look at like why I'm invested in podcasting, the abilities that SMB owners, that influencers, that entrepreneurs have, the responsibility we have, to put the pieces out there so that people can take our pieces and create be aware that there's a bigger puzzle, going on. And I subscribe to that philosophy. I believe in it. And hopefully this little piece of the puzzle finds its way to people who are looking to, maybe with me, leverage their, I like to say find fame and leverage it for impact. Like, right, I don't love working with people who only care about being celebrities. Like, that doesn't vibe with me. That's not my vibe. It never was. But the people who are changing our lives, are showing up in politics, are showing up off camera, and their names are first on lists in groups that aren't identified normally in media. That it's really important for me to focus on leveling up what we're doing. And I believe that business owners and influencers and entrepreneurs had that innate talent and skill set to do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was lovely meeting you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you're listening and you like what you hear, please consider subscribing and rating this podcast, as it really helps get this podcast out to other people who might be interested in hearing it but don't know about it yet. And also, if you'd like to contact me or reach me, you can reach me at unconditioningpodcast@gmail.com or unconditioningpodcast on Instagram. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay tuned in to you.